normally or abnormally be modulated by some kind of psychotropic substance. That's all I had to say. I'm sorry the conversation moved fast, so that was it. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it could be a lot of things. I used to eat bugs now and then. So, who knows? Maybe I ate a bad bug. People used to pay me, a nickel to eat a bug. So I used to do it. So I was a bad person.
The thing is, what I think is that, okay, but fine with what people report on psychedelic substances, but I think it's kind of a better thing if we're using our own experiences to, and trying to make them rational. If you can remember things as a child, like we were discussing, where you saw and then realized, I think a lot of times as a child you had real experiences, like, fear of the dark. There's the kind of experience you have, real experiences, and then later you figure out, oh, that was my mind and how it works, and you think, so it doesn't matter. But my take on this is, no, that is exactly what matters. What we're missing philosophically, what we need is a user's manual for the human mind. It's this incredible special effects. We pay money to go see 3D movies, and our brain could do way more than that, but we can't control it. We don't know how this thing works, even though we use it, and we're obviously kind of good at it in some sense of using it. But so all of these things where we found out, oh, that was just how our mind was working, or we thought that's how our mind was playing tricks on us, but no, it's how our mind was working. If we figure that out and go back to that threshold, it can be confusing again, but it's actually really powerful, because that's where your brain is making decisions that if you are just living downstream, you're victim to those assumptions. But if you go back up there and realize that you are helping to make these images and whatnot, and that there's imaginary parts, it's like getting access to the icons and the user interface of the human brain. I think that's possible.
Okay. Yeah, it just seems like we're getting kind of far afield. I mean, I still would like to get down to a more concise definitions of these things. And like I said, Conference Smart made a pretty good video about the word consciousness and life, and these are the two words we're tripping over. And I think you can't separate consciousness, can't separate thinking from feeling, and you can't separate either one of those two functions from neurology. I mean, I think this has got to be a premise. And anything that goes outside that premise, I think, is just being phantasmagorical, making gingerbread shit up.
So the family radio website is down, the radio station's off the air. I have a feeling all Harold Camping was predicting is like, well, what I really mean, if you would do an interpretation of what I said, like I do with the Bible, you would have gotten the message that I'm taking the $100 million. See you guys. I'm somewhere in the Atlantic. Bye.
Well, like I said, I think they did just fine. They got a bunch of propaganda out there. They got everybody talking about Jeebus and religion and shit. So, in my opinion, they're probably figuring it was money well spent.
Well, the funny thing about him is,
Wait,
he's
fire, hold on. Gary, would you prefer that everyone think about the end of the world every day?
Not every day, no. But, like I said, when they're doing the serious human thing, you really have to.
Do you think it's healthy to at least think about, the planet and life and death?
These are facts of our lifetime.
Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the subject matter of most of my videos, so obviously I have sort of a tendency to think these are important conversations to have.
This rapture shit is just a conversation starter then, because we both know that it's bullshit, so...
I know, but it has the conversation in a pretty bad context, in my opinion, where it's, it's all layered in this religion and dogma and morality and all that crap. So to me, it just is a conversation killer. it just becomes a. I don't see it as constructive for rational thought.
Thinking about doom.
Well, just thinking about creation and gods and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I just think, as soon as you open these doors and you have to get people back to the DNA and you have to get them back focused on 4 billion years of evolution and back to the idea that the universe doesn't, you always have to restart the conversation. As soon as God gets injected, and you have to get it back, you have to go all the way back again and say, no, here's the real context. Your lens is getting warped and bent again. And so you always have to straighten the lens, and it's just such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I agree. But I still think that it's healthy for the majority of society to consider, what could bring the end of the world and all those things. Well, that's a beautiful kitty. That is a beautiful kitty, Harry. You're a lucky man. That's that weird thing where he drools when you scratch him.
Yeah, that's the weird thing where I think he's got Alzheimer's anyway. He's getting old, He's doing okay, but he's getting old.
If you had a choice, would you rather be one of your cats?
No, they don't have, they got them, well, the one cat has balls still, so I might go for him. But yeah, no, I'm not being anything that doesn't have balls.
One thing that makes life worth living is knowing that we can give them a better life than they would have ever had. Knowing that we can take care of them, keep them safe, they don't have to starve. All 3 of my cats are left abandoned. I found them outside and took care of them, and they're perfectly happy, and that gives me one more day to live for.
Yeah, I don't find it that much pleasure, but yeah, I feed 4 cats every day. Not my cats, but, I'm stuck with them. Oh, that's a little vanilla cat. Yeah.
Oh, cleaning its butthole. That's so cute.
Yeah, well, it is a fluffy cat, though. Right. Yeah, my cats are usually somewhat damaged, unfortunately. So usually, this one's got a broken leg. It's healed, but his front leg's busted. And but I had one of those yellow cats, the orange yellowy cats. And I don't know what happened to it. It just got totally wasted by somebody. I don't know whether a dog got it or something. It was so funny. I knew it for 10 years, and it wouldn't let me pet it. Never. And it got totally wasted. And it's got legs broken, the whole thing. And I found it in the woods, and I fed it, and it was caught in the prickers. Well, anyway, and after that, it figured out that I'm a nice guy, and it just became a complete whore for getting petted. It just like, oh man, I had no idea humans were good for this. It was just so funny that it just turned into completely, a very domestic cat. And it required, though, to go through that horrible experience for it to trust me.
A good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, he was a good cat, though. There was a little girl cat, and he used to call her for dinner. And he was just so polite. He'd fight with every other male, though. He was, he had a busted leg, and he was, a mess, but he would still fight with any male that came around. But I had to build a ramp for him so he could get up on the deck, and, that, whatever. It's all right. Yeah, that's a comfortable cat. I don't know what was boring. We talked about how the brain works, got into consciousness, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit of conversation about a cat. It's just too boring for you, huh? You know what? Wait, maybe I just fuck off. Yeah, that's maybe what you should do. Yeah, fuck off. That sucker.
Hey, Gary, I didn't watch Modern Mystics thing that you were bitching about, but I actually liked the video where you were bitching about it, but maybe that's just because I'm an internet watcher and we all like bitching, I guess. But no, it sounded reasonable what you were saying, but I didn't watch. What was the thing he did and why is it a sellout? What was he saying about consciousness? But try to put it in his words because I heard your side already. But I was curious, like, what would he say? What was he trying to do? Because I agree with you, too, that I like him, but he does do some stretches to connect two opposite things so he can have his cake and also eat his cake and still keep it type thing.
Yeah, sorry, who are you talking about? Conference report?
Modern Mystic, didn't you reply to him and you said he had some theory of consciousness, and I read people mentioning that, and I haven't seen his video on that.
Yeah, no, his last video was...
Watch him a little bit because I'm not that into the economic doomsday theory.
Yeah, no, his last video was quite tolerable. You know, I added on to it, like I said, with my drawing video, it was basically a response to his video, because I just kind of added on to it. This he just went through.
Oh, that one, yeah, I didn't finish that yet. Yeah, I did see the beginning of it, but no.
But anyway, yeah, no, I don't really have a problem with Nick on consciousness. I mean, my problem with Nick...
Of course not, but what was he saying?
Is on the subject of, you know, what it means to, you know, he doesn't take feelings all that seriously, you know, which bothers me. Yeah, well, he sort of, like I said, the Modern Mystics sort of did make a pretty good concession to me, so, I mean, I have to feel pretty good about that. I mean, he basically said in the video before last or whatever, you know, that, yeah, well, you know, the easiest solution is just to let go of the need to live, and then you won't have to fix everything.
Hey, you know what, on a different thing, the Armageddon or the Judgment Day today, I was thinking, what if it did happen, but we just couldn't tell because there was nobody worth saving? And Jesus would be like, I told you you were all sinners, what the fuck did you mean? And maybe it actually did happen, and probably all the Christians will realize that and just give up.
I know, but the guy was kind of explicit. He said there was going to be like the biggest earthquake the world has ever known. So, I mean, obviously the biggest earthquake the world has ever known didn't happen.
A media earthquake.
Well, he didn't say one of those, but whatever. Yes, okay, it was a, well, it wasn't really earthquakey. But the funny one is Venom Thing X made a video and he basically explained the truth about what the Bible says. And apparently the real truth is that the rapture doesn't really happen until 1,000 years after Jesus is king. And, you know, first you have to go through some other thing, like Jesus Shows Up Day or whatever it's called. Like,
one of the great things about this stuff has been watching Christians argue with each other, you know, like reasonable Christians that normally won't touch this when was the flood kind of stuff, and but they all have it, and they're just, no, it's not true, and Jesus said you wouldn't know the time, and even if you did, most people say it was on Thursday, and it's just really funny. It's like, it's a lot like watching people argue about, you know, episode 4 in Star Wars. No, Jar Jar Binks was from this planet, and
yeah, well, I mean, you know, they'll just come up with some kind. No, the Jews aren't really the chosen people, so no, the New York Jews have to move to Israel, or some, you know, they'll come up with some kind of excuse why it's not really, you know, the circumstance hasn't been satisfied.
you have to admit that Bible prophecy still resonates a little bit, and I figure it's because I'm Christian, but on the other hand, like, okay, probably a self-fulfilling prophecy, but like having a prophecy about Israel and existing and Israel not existing, and then it exists again, it is sort of a little bit like, you know, it's enough to make the Da Vinci Code captivating for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it does
kind of
make
a
it too. It also
reality,
makes you think,
unfortunately.
like, what were they thinking, you know, when they did the whole Israel thing? Just because you're sort of like saying, well, don't you see how you're just kind of setting yourself up for disaster there? Because if your religion is true, you know, aren't you setting yourself up for getting annihilated? So maybe you shouldn't move to Israel. Maybe that's not the best place
Well,
for the
that's
Jews
the
to go.
self-fulfilling prophecy. I strongly feel that the Christians are going to have an Armageddon. It's going to be something they throw themselves. I mean, there is a self-fulfilling prophecy reality that's sort of scary. Like, I expect them to have a big old third world war, because that is what their fucking religion says has to happen. They're going to make it happen self-fulfilling style. I mean, unless
Yeah,
you
well, I
stop
think
them.
they're going to do it, but I don't think they're going to do it on purpose. So, I mean, I think they're just going to do it more like Planet of the Apes, worshiping their bomb and their money
Yeah,
and
well,
their
it's
bullshit.
sort of that accident on purpose when an idiot child that's just always going to cause trouble. God bless him. I love to try to save him, but you know, is just going to fuck up on purpose accidents kind of thing. If you, I mean, that's a theory of mine, you know.
Well, I mean, the on purpose accident thing would be basically that we're not taking responsibility for the dangers that are obvious because people keep thinking a God is going to come save the day. You know, like Mighty Mouse will save the day, and it's not going to happen. We have to save the day, and they're not doing that. They're not doing what it takes to fix these real problems. You can't do this procreate, you know, be fruitful and procreate. Well, guess what? That can't work forever. You know, unless you got a second Earth somewhere, we're in big trouble.
Is that people think that anything X would know the truth about anything.
I don't know. I mean, you know, when it comes to Bible authority, I mean, why not? I mean, he'd know just as well as anybody else, right?
Bible's bullshit, right? We all know the Bible's bullshit. Well, how can he know truth from bullshit?
Well, who says he did? I'm just saying that he's just as good as anybody else.
Bible's bullshit. How can you be telling?
Well,
how
no,
can
it's
you
a
know
matter of,
truth
look, it's a matter of obviously
if
these
it's bullshit?
metaphors,
That
okay? It's
doesn't make
interpreting
sense.
metaphors, old hacks, okay? So when it says something like, the Babylonites will fly
He's a literalist.
to the fourth dimension of ink. Yeah, so well, maybe Venom Fang X is good at figuring out what
He's
an
a
ink
literalist.
is.
He thinks the rapture's coming. He's a literalist. He's not a metaphor guy. He's not a.
Well, I'm saying but the book itself is written in metaphors.
Manner.
The book itself is written in metaphors. So I'm just saying it doesn't matter whether he's a literalist. The point is you have to
No, me and
interpret
you
the
know.
poetry. There's poetry in the Bible, and they're trying to make it explicit. I'm just saying.
I was in a church today for a piano recital, and I picked up the Bible, and it's funny, the Bible. I'd opened it up, and immediately was on a story about guys that their problem was, we don't have enough wives. We said we wouldn't give any more wives to those guys. What should we do? Well, we got a solution. We'll just go and we'll steal and rape these women and make them be our wives when they're dancing in praise of their God. Sounds good. Let's go do it. Okay, good job. Now nobody's guilty because you didn't let them marry their wives. Instead, they stole them. Everybody's happy. The children of Israel are doing good. I mean, it's like you just open this book and it's like every page has something horrible in it. It's just so amazing to me people would worship it.
Well, it's
really
the Old
bizarre.
Testament, you know, so they write all that
Even
stuff
the new,
off.
but yeah, the new has some, you can hit a good part, but even so, it'll be right in there. And by the way, fuck him because he was gay, and then we tore his eyes out. It's like, it's the most horrendous piece of criminal, you know, murder porn fiction you ever read. It's worse than Call of Duty, which I just got, which is also murder porn, but at least it's really well made, much better written than the Bible.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but the Bible, look, the Bible does have those little outstanding bits, you know, like the Golden Rule and the Sermon on the Mount and the forgive 70 times, 70 times, and all that kind of crap. It has some good stuff in it.
Yeah, no, and if you abstract out the thing of Jesus, or for that matter, if you look at the Jesus of the Dead Sea Scrolls, you know, and parts that didn't make it into the Bible once it got mainstream, There's a lot of beautiful parts in there, but still the problem with it is that it's a slave thing. It's like, you know what, the master says he has all this moral authority. Well, I've got a master that has even more moral authority. And ultimately that's beautiful to a degree, but you end up being a slave to this other guy that's just imaginary, which is then a
Yeah, I
slave
know,
to
but
your
that's not really, that's the Old Testament God, that's not the New Testament. If you really listen, if you really read Jesus, I mean, Jesus is a fucking naturalist now. Jesus was basically saying nobody needs anything. Jesus was saying give up on civilization, give up on your round wheels, give up on your bullshit. Birds have wings, they fly. Humans have penises, they fuck. You know, whatever the, you know, he was just making the simple argument that go back to the garden. You know, he was just making that basic argument that you don't need a house, you don't need property, you don't need slaves, you don't need money. You don't need any of this crap. You can just be a bird.
Well, first of all, that sounds like phantasmagorical, pie-in-the-sky bullshit. You could be a bird, something Piro would say. And second of all, you're a closet Christian.
Well, whatever. I'm not a closet Christian. I'm not advocating that point of view. I'm just saying that's what Jesus was saying all out through the Bible. If you read the damn Bible, that's what Jesus was advocating.
Well, in all seriousness, I agree. I mean, it's like Nietzsche said, who wrote the anti-Christian, but he said, well, but actually the historical character of Jesus was way ahead of his time. He overpowered and overcame, you know, the rules of power of his day, and so on and so forth. But the institutionalized church is a total fuck-up, and if you look at it with Paul, it's pretty much clear, like a marketing job rip-off. Like
yeah, well, look, Gandhi said, you know that famous Gandhi line, you know, the only thing wrong with Christianity is Christians. I mean, you know, it's a great line.
I like the one he said about, somebody asked him about what he thought of Western civilization, and he said, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. I'm halfway through. I'm like taking 2 years to read Gandhi's autobiography, and it's really interesting, the first half. And one thing is that because he was one of these guys that was a goody two-shoes about, he was a British citizen. You know, he helped in the war. He started ambulance corps, which according to his ethics was still like being a soldier and killing people, but he felt being a British citizen and helping out in time of need was more important, and he would just deal with that.
The part where it's fucking little girls yet.
Probably not in the autobiography.
His wife anymore. He's all doesn't want to do medical treatment on his children. He struggles with all that. He knows that that is wrong in some sense, but also he has to do it. It's a very interesting book. It's not very stuck up at all. You can see how he knew his own faults, including being too faithful to like Hinduism, and then, you know, not getting proper medical care for his kids. But then they made it through that, but then he also didn't give them Western education, even though he was educated as a lawyer, and some of his kids were pissed at him for that. And of course, he's the one relaying this, so you assume he also knew that. I mean, he could even have been wrong, but probably correct.
Yeah, well, he probably shouldn't have had kids at all. I mean, that whole part I found very hypocritical of him. You know, the whole mission thing sort of gets distracted by that kind of nonsense.
You know, he lived in kind of a commune sort of situation in South Africa for a while and sort of thought he'd retire, but he was still just young, like younger than us at the time, and you can kind of feel old and think you're going to do that. He didn't. But kind of interesting stuff. You know, know, the thing about Einstein, too, is that, and I would have probably tried to get Steizor to talk something reasonable on Einstein, since he said Einstein, but, you know, one, okay, so he's on your side in quantum mechanics, but two, he invented quantum mechanics. He's the one that proved both molecules, or demonstrated, whatever, that both molecules and photons.
Sound went out. Press to talk and such. Your mic's
I
out.
wasn't talking.
Yeah, your mic
But
went
what
out.
I was saying is that someone like you maybe should feel a little bit obligated, not literally, to agree with the part of quantum mechanics that Einstein agreed with. That Einstein agreed with, but not necessarily anymore. But you don't have to actually agree with Einstein, but you know what I mean. There's reason to go ahead and say, well, accept the parts he accepted.
Yeah, I just don't see any need to do any of that. So, you know, I'm just going to stay open. Like I said, I've accepted quantum mechanics as as probability math, and but I don't have to accept any other nuanced special qualities of photons because we don't have a real clear model yet. The model really hasn't been written yet, in my opinion. It's just there's too many ways the model can be explained. I mean, there's too many ways. We just don't have that map yet. The map is too fuzzy.
Hey, congratulations on your progress on your stuff. I see how you're using all the JavaScript APIs, that they're kind of, I can tell you're using them at the core level where you call them the JavaScript stuff, because, anyway, good job. Yeah, you have a good hacker mentality, and I've worked with a lot of people that had whatever their own education was, so good job on the self-education and the apps you're making.
Well, I liked my little one, the little script I put on there, the little blocking script. I thought that was a pretty good one. You know, you can just put somebody's name in and block them from any page. I thought that was pretty good.
I thought it was ironically good, and that was one of the cases where I'm going, oh, good job, Mr. Developer in Mandan. But of course, you're a fascist pig. You invented it for such a fascist reason. But still, yes, obviously that you. But isn't it amazing? As far as how evil Google is, they still do the right thing there, which is they expose so much of their API. You could actually make a YouTube website with their API. Of course, the videos would show up on YouTube too, and that's where they get the last laugh. But good for them. I mean, just to expose where you can add comments, you can block people, you can anything. I mean, they have an API for the whole thing. You don't have to fake any of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to migrate it to too, is because you can also, like those little players I have now, you know, you can just run the videos right into one player on the page. You know, so I could basically just have the box load on a page, and then all the videos could just play in one player. You know, I mean, it really is nice that they do give you that faculty, you know, that ability, and you can run other videos into their player, which is really interesting. So I gotta mess with that stuff. I mean, Flash FLV files anyway. But there's a lot of stuff I want to work on. The other thing you can do with their pages you can't do on some websites is you can actually, you know, put frames into their page. So you could basically create a thing that kept loaded, you know, that auto-loaded. So I could have JavaScript that basically kept auto-loading into any YouTube page. And that's kind of convenient, because then you can start using cookies, and then people could design the page their own way, and people could have their own preferences. So like every YouTube channel you went to could have the same background,
You can even have
the same colors, the same everything. You know, you could
have you
really.
looked at the part where you can even record videos? So if you want to have want to have a debate, you could even have the interface where people record the debate and they record the second step and it automatically replies, so people don't have to remember any little rules for your system. It's all, there's a lot of time into getting every detail, but everyone is exposed, and it's pretty straightforward, and it's like they want you to do that. I don't think Google is going to turn you off, because they can still put the insert ad. They can still try to get people to be partners. You never escape them in that sense. But if you do a system like that, there's no reason you can't do it such that you can work with other video sites, and it's a way to migrate away from YouTube, to the degree you think they are evil. You can, once you have a database like that, you can migrate over to using your Vimeo or whatever else, and add the features that those sites don't have, like decent comments and a reply chain system, and Anyway, good work. I think the problem, if I was given constructive comments, but not even that, but the difficulty is always the interface. Can people understand the interface? When my compliments are about, I see you know how to get the job done. But
yeah, I don't do the GUI thing very well. No doubt about it.
Learning interface, it's hard to... So don't get me wrong, I like your interface, but I mean, that's always the catching point of whether people would, there's a lot of people that should use, well, I should be using it more. And so there's people that should use your software, but there's weird thresholds like the user interface that'll keep them from doing it. Even though if they just learn how it works, because you made it a way that it could work, and it would benefit them, they won't use it. That's the weird part of software, and I learned that when I was programming games, the interface and how you present things to people is almost more important than what you do, because while what you do should be more important, people won't use it if it's not, So I actually like what you're doing. I mean, the whole fact, because you're making it so you can do a bunch of things at one point, and that just gets so useful that people will learn and benefit from it. Interweb drama.
Yeah, it's good for you to repeat what it is.
That's why you should have...
Yeah, kick all this stuff.
I'm really ruthless in stick 'em. I kick people left and right because I never do in YouTube. So I'm like, yeah, kick 'em. It's fun.
I believe I've adequately killed it. 3 of them. I don't know. See if there's a 4th. Oh, there's another one.
There's another one. Interweb drama.
Idiots. But whatever. I guess people gotta entertain themselves some way. Well, something like that. I'm sure this murder the fuckers.
Honestly, back on the paramecium thing, I would think that the bacteria with brains guy, the famous and notorious infamous
Brains, Pyro, brains.
But I would think you would be all about, yeah, bacteria don't have the brains. Of course they feel the sugar and that they're cramped, and because we're no better than them. It's a good way to honestly degrade without degrading. Humans, we're just biochemistry too. That's the whole point of bacteria with brains. So we have brains, but isn't part of your point of bacteria with brains that we're driven a lot by, you call it the ape, but in that example, we're driven by the bacteria part. A lot more than we think. That brain is a lot more, it's a slave to that bacteria part. Even more so than the ape. The ape is like the brains part compared to that bacteria part is just like, I want sugars. Fuck you, I don't care how. I want this and that. I don't care how, the cold ruthless part you talk about.
Well, none of it's all a slave to a DNA. It's all a slave to the survival thing and all that kind of crap. So, but yeah, I mean,
that's the bacteria part. That's the thing. The DNA.
But I know. I'm just saying. But that's sort of the depressing part. Is the brain is basically owned by the bullshit.
I love the DNA. I worship it, but I'm just saying it does lend itself to your argument. I mean, I'm like that. I will admit, it lends yourself to your argument. Though I love my DNA, grandma DNA, it's the bacteria is our slave master, is the other side of that coin. It's, you know, it's almost an interpretation. Like, I can't say it's not that way. It does pull, it's a puppet master. Worse than a slave. It makes you think you want things that aren't even good for you, for example. That's kind of fucked up. And it's the bacteria part doing that. We call it the ape, and that's true too, but that's just from the mammal perspective. Really, it's the bacteria part. The bacteria part that will go and swallow up another living organism, literally alive, and it lives in there while it's eating away. More, you know, it's more alive than those lions eating that elephant, in a sense, you know, because it might seem a shorter period of time, but it's not for the on their scale.
Well, whatever. Like I said, I'm not gonna even this backdoor way concede this bacteria brain thing. But I'm just going to argue that, you know, I think you're just kind of breaking the metaphor. You know, I mean, obviously we're owned by the genetics.
Oh my God, I got to tell you.
Genetics create the desire, but your conditioning creates what you desire. So theoretically, we could desire much more elegant things.
I got to throw this other thing at you here, because I had a thought the other day. I was realizing I had a brilliant moment, a light bulb going off over my head, which is, you know, I am adamantly never going to have any more children. Absolutely. And I realized this gives me a freedom that I can, in this antinatalism argument, I can just become an antinatalist. Because basically, personally, I am. I am antinatalizing anymore. I found out my ex is pregnant. I'm like, what the fuck? She's crazy. And I realized it too. Actually, I thought of this before that, but it just reinforces. So I am an antinatalist. And I think the question is, what do you do with the ones that are already living? And I just want to focus on, what do you do with the ones that are already living? Because I'm not going to natalize anymore. I'm not for natalizing and natalism. So I think I can legitimately change the question to, what do you do with the living? And since you guys are all really bleeding heart liberals, all you antinatalists, I think I win, because you're going to say, do nice things, and that's all I'm saying, is let's do nice things to the living. So, anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of important when the nicest things you need to do is to tell the young living not to make the same mistake you made. So you do have to basically describe what you did as a mistake. You can't glorify your past life and say, no, I can live both standards. I can have my cake and eat it too. No, you have to basically you have to at least acknowledge that you made a mistake.
Well, we could ask them, but my kids are not the kind that have any pressure to have children. They know that actually, no, they don't. So.
Well, it's not about pressure to have children. It's about aggressively understanding the magnitude of the responsibility, the fact that you don't understand when you're young what life really is and what it means and what kind of mess you can step into. It's about a lot more than having the ability to make a free choice. It's about making an informed choice.
Well, yeah, but just that culture does pressure people a lot, and a lot of parents, into that expectation, even just subtly. So I'm just saying I've counteracted that. I don't want to pressure them to not have children, but yeah, they know. But, you know, I haven't actually, like, taught them as an antinatalist thing that morally it's better not to. But,
well, I'm just saying, it's totally useless to be benign on the subject.
No,
you really can't call yourself antinatalist if you're just going to sit there and say, I can have kids and you can't. I mean, that's just an incredible hypocrisy.
No, you got the idea totally, exactly. I realize with the benefit of time, I could be like, no, I'm reformed now. I'm totally against it. I'm for becoming an antinatalist after you have 2 kids. It's a beautiful plan. It's awesome. I'm an antinatalist.
Well, I just think it sort of makes you evil. I don't think it's a great plan. I think it's just a great plan to be evil.
Yes. No, exactly. Yeah, no, but you're getting the idea. I can see you understand. On the other hand, there's a grain of truth to all of it, because I am very, you know, if that counted as antinatalism, no, like, there's no way I would have another kid. It's beyond absolutely not. And, like, you know, for me to have a kid would mean the whole second part of my life, and would also be kids And it's like, that would just be crazy.
Yeah, well, maybe eventually you'll admit that the first half of your life being thrown in the toilet was crazy too.
Well, I mean, no, because see, that's the point. These are people already alive. You can't say it was crazy. And it
You
wasn't
can
crazy.
say it. It's not a big deal. My parents said it. Okay, I got my parents to say it. It was no big deal. They could admit that yeah, they made an ignorant, dumb mistake. Okay, because they did what everybody else was doing. But if they had it to do over again, they admit that they'd rather have gone see the Great Pyramids. They'd rather have gone to Vienna. They'd rather have traveled the world than, you know, wipe snotty noses.
Well, they know that. Well, see, it wasn't a mistake in the sense that it just as well because I like knowing them. That's what I hope that they know. But they do know that that it didn't work out with their mom, and yeah, it would be they know it was a mistake in that sense. Like I've always said, I mean, I think one way you deal with this antinatalism issue, it's sort of like solipsism. I think you overcome it, but it presents an issue of how do you justify it, I mean, they understand that I've made mistakes and they have to figure some of that out.
Well, I'm just saying sometimes you have to be a little more explicit, okay? Just as ambiguous. I made a mistake because, okay, the cardboard box broke. Now, you have to be a little clearer that, no, I made a mistake because I had an ignorant perception. I had an ignorant perception of what life was and what made life meaningful, and I didn't really appreciate the extent of the responsibility and a lot of this other stuff, and that, yes, theoretically, there's just no good reason to do this.
Well, but part of what you don't get is that we are given these hormones and various other things that lead to it. So it's sort of an
Well, I'm not going to argue that because that's like arguing with a fucking 10-year-old. I mean, we know what condoms are. We know what birth control is. There's just no excuse for saying, the penis made me do it. I mean, come on, that's just such a lame excuse.
No, hello, I did not have an accident. I was with my ex-wife for 7 years, and I wanted to have kids. The trick that the hormones play is they make you want to have kids. They don't make you not know how to do.
Well, I'm just saying they make you want to have kids, but they don't. Okay, obviously my hormones don't make me want to have kids. Okay, so your culture, your ego.
Well, you were lucky
well, I'm just saying a lot of different things might have made you want to do it, but it wasn't anything that was DNA or biology. Okay, DNA and biology wants you to get vagina. Oh, I'm sorry. I've never in one moment ever had. I've never thought about having kids and had an erection. Those two things have never gone together. Kids are boner killers. I mean, super mega boner killers. Okay? Having a baby is the last thing I want to have even slightly connected to the sex act. I don't even want to imagine as a possibility on the farthest, darkest planet in the universe. I don't even want it to be a possibility.
There's a bell curve in the universe. I don't even want to be a bell curve. There's a bell curve, and some people are going to end up wanting to do it. You were lucky.
I'm saying, but you're not going to want it for a biological reason. That might be an excuse for a woman with breasts who are saying, there's nothing hanging off of my breasts. My breasts are not complete because they don't have something hanging off of them. Okay, that might be a logical conclusion, but I still don't even buy it. No animal in nature is fornicating and saying, I'm making eggs, I'm making babies. No, it's not saying that. Okay, it's saying I'm having sex and it's really, really fun.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the whole point about the bacteria controls the brain.
Well, I'm just saying that, I don't think there's any organism out there saying, oh, super cool, these little fucking things popped out.
Like, screw that. I like that argument that guy had that antinatalists are the ones that should have kids because otherwise the other people that are idiots about the problems in the world are going to have kids.
Well, you
and
know
they'll
it
take
doesn't. You
over.
know it doesn't breed that way. You know your kids are going to end up being Republicans,
kids.
Pyro. Pyro, you know your kids are going to end up being
I
Republicans.
think Chris.
You know that's how it always
Chris-
works. Okay, the acorn doesn't even fall.
works.
It's not like the acorn falls close to the tree. No, the acorn falls exactly on the opposite side of the planet. Okay, I mean I am nothing like my father, except in character. But, you know, in politics, everything else, nothing like him.
You mean he was ornery and rude?
Yeah, right, exactly. He was polite and Republican.
Oh, well then, you sound better. I prefer liberal and a bit rude to that.
Well, I'm just saying, it's
polite
the
is
opposite thing. I'm just saying that there would be no point, if I had a kid, he would turn into, like, whatever, you know, a Republican flower child or something. I don't know.
Hello. Grandkids, what does that mean about your grandkids? Gifts of generation.
Yeah, well, they're just, you know, whatever. I don't even want to. It won't be a
No,
world
after
then.
if you were an antinatalist and then you have kids, you just go, well, I'm just going to hold out for the grandkids.
Yeah, right, and then the great-grandkids will outnumber the grandkids, and so we'll just keep playing this game, and we'll just say, well, whose hand is going to be on the bat last, right? We're just doing that bat thing. Okay, I put my hand on the bat, you put your hand on the bat, you put your hand, and whoever gets the last hand on the bat wins.
No, but it's a solution is that you urge your grandkids to be antinatalists.
Well, I'm just saying that I just don't buy this argument that it has something to do with parenting. Has, you know, because, you know, it's all that reverse psychology thing, and it would just probably not work out at all. Sorry, I didn't push the button. You know, I'm just saying it wouldn't work out. You know how it works out. It's very hard. So it's very hard to deliberately train a child.
So what should I say to my ex, who quite shockingly she's pregnant? She's 43 like me, and evidently she's been saying to my kids, "Be ready, you might be, you know, have a little sister or brother." And so what do I say to her? Since you're the expert in antinatalism, and I'm feeling particularly antinatalist about this particular one, and how do I deal with that? And also, I need some Dear Abby advice on this is going to be my children's half brother or sister. So, what is my obligation to like? Do I have to adopt the child since the mother is unfit, or what?
Oh, you mean she doesn't even have a husband? I mean, fuck.
So she has a 22-year-old guy that is maybe the father, or maybe some other 25-year-old.
Oh, great. I mean, you just say, Jane, you ignorant slut. Please, grow a brain. Do the right thing. Don't do this. Come on. You know, the autism. Come on. What? Why would you do that to a kid?
Do you think seriously? Do you think it's inappropriate? I'm going to ask her if she's planning to get an abortion. But do you think is that inappropriate? Is that even sexist or terrible? Why?
That's a legitimate concern.
I'd write her a letter, Pyro, to tell you the truth. You know, just, you know, have a couple of drinks, write it down, send her the letter, just kind of explaining, you know, look, life is really screwed up. You know, we kind of screwed it up. You know, a kid starting off, 44-year-old mother, you know, there's a lot of chemistry can go all wrong. It can go wrong for you, it can go wrong for the baby. And we're living in really weird times. We got Fukushima stuff. We got World War III coming. This is just not the time.
Well, I have a friend that's just 40, and she just waited that long, and it was like it was hard for them and stuff, but it's working out. But yeah, well, you know, exactly, because the thing is, in all honesty, like you said, she and I, it doesn't mean everybody's going to fuck up in general, but it didn't work out for her. I can't get where she thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think it's about it being a good idea. I think your ex-wife is just one of these people who likes having kids or likes having things unconditionally love them or some other excuse. I mean, I know a girl, I mean, she had kids because she wanted something to unconditionally love her. And it was like, what the fuck? You don't have kids to satisfy you. I mean, they're not your toy. They're not a plaything, you fuck.
That's like this idea, this old ancient idea that, oh, I want to have a child, someone to take care of me when I grow old. Like, it's so ridiculously selfish. Pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not your Social Security, check, and I'm not your pension plan. I'm not any of that shit. You have just no business playing that game. My parents are doing that to me a little bit now, but they're 90 years old, and they play this game a little bit like, oh, you don't have a life. Why don't you come here and wipe our asses? And I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Well, now that I'm getting all personal, her personal, not mine as much, I guess, though it is, because I was with this person for so long, it's less on me, but anyway. Yeah, well, she has not gotten along with my 16-year-old daughter for years, so stopped seeing her. She had to start living with me full time and stuff. And then lately, she hasn't been getting along with the 12-year-old who's about to be 13. So it's almost like, oh, I've lost the unconditional love because they've realized that my fits of anger are fucked up, and I will just start another one. They're good for like 12 years, these things. Seriously, but I'm biased. But
well,
anyway,
I'm just saying. I mean, she just doesn't seem like you. Seems like you married a woman who's pretty dumb. I mean, maybe you did that for a lot of reasons, but yeah, she doesn't sound like the smartest knife in the drawer, as they say, or sharpest.
Exactly. I'll cop to the reason.
Yeah, I know that reason. Sorry, yeah, something froze here. Technical difficulties and such. What the fuck happened here?
Boss man is back.
Everything went broken. Yeah. Whoa, weird. I'm all pixelated now. Goddamn blog TV shit, maybe. I don't know. I'm all pixelated.
Welcome back, Gary, random masturbator.
Never random. But anyway. Gotta fix it. I don't like this pixelated shit. I'm gonna figure a way to fix that.
It froze.
Yeah, blew up and shit.
Oh, not just me.
See, I hear a lot of people with the whole antinatalist argument bring up the concept of resource management and that being a big problem with with things. And if we could manage our resources better, we could breed like fucking bunnies. I think that's retarded. For me, the whole idea of more people equals more stupid people. So I find the idea repulsive. But
yeah, well, Pyro's one of those people. He thinks if we all have a glass of water, we have a glass of water, a loaf of bread, that we're all fine. So we could all have a loaf of bread, a glass of water, a little crappy teepee to live in, and a wooden TV, a wooden 6-inch black and white TV. We'll all be just fine.
Gary, this won't work for you, but
Push to talk there, Pyro. You're not pushing, I don't think.
oh, sorry. Janis Joplin was from Texas. The point is that the subcultures are usually better than the cultures. Or like I've had some activists, radical activist friends from Japan that had really conservative upbringings. Because of that factor that Gary was talking about, they end up being like super liberal, super, whatever, honest, whatever is this. So when they're in a bad culture, they become a good subculture. So, my point is, you got more people, and there is this bad conformist culture, and they're going to become the Borg, but meanwhile, that's going to generate a really awesome subculture, and if you just live in that subculture,
well, where's the awesome subculture in Islam? I mean, where exactly is that? I haven't seen the Islamic, the kick-ass Islamic subculture.
That's a perfect example. When I went to college, I went to this one Catholic school that had a bunch of people that were Islamic from Malaysia and stuff, and oddly enough, also like royal family from Saudi Arabia, who were total pricks. But like the cool subculture of Islam, well, I had a Malaysian friend, and she went back and is high-powered in Malaysia, and she was awesome. I mean, it works for any culture, but I wouldn't look for great things from the religious subcultures. But I mean, from this conformist, there is a Borg-like mentality that's going to take over. But the people that are like, fuck that, are going to be all the better. They're more clear-headed about actually rejecting the mainstream, but they're never going to be mainstream that way. And you just have to be happy. And it's like you or me, you don't like the subscriptions. I'm like, I come to a...
Yeah, well, whatever, Pyro. I just don't see it in the numbers. I mean, 1 out of 100 people on planet Earth is a college graduate. The average butthead who's a nonconformist is just some sort of pothead, right? I mean, how many of them are just, yeah, man, gotta make pot legal and everything will be okay then, man. Like that'll solve all the world's problems. Like we'll make hemp mansions, and we'll drive across hemp bridges, and we'll have like hemp roads and hemp light cruisers, and
Well, no, I don't think the society's ever going to do that, except for they probably will because it's going to be cheaper. They're going to start using fibers like that. But they'll never do it because it's the right thing. But so that's the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are people that will organic farm, but that doesn't mean they'll become mainstream. But the fact that they're not mainstream will help them be better organic farmers. They have
whatever. There'll be organic farmers, hugely inefficient. Is not a plan that is sustainable for populations of 7 billion people. More people is bad. Okay? Okay? More people is bad. Okay?
Yes, you think that, but it's for different reasons than I'm talking about, okay? It's not because you disagree that there's a subculture.
Yeah, I think so, for the very reason.
Wait a second. If somebody is self-indulgent, I admit they're self-indulgent by your standards, and they just want to live in the fact that the culture, the main culture, is fucked up and never going to be better, doesn't mean there won't be a subculture. But by your standards, that's not good enough because the multitudes of people are having a fucked up existence. I understand that. I'm separating the issues out to foreshadow here to see if he sees what I'm talking about. Because I wouldn't be surprised if you live in the subculture right now as a coping mechanism. That's what I do.
Yeah, well, whatever. That coping mechanism is just not going to work in World War III. It's not going to work when you're having food wars. It's just not going to solve the problem. It just isn't. We gotta change the culture. We can't have subculture. We gotta have dominant rational culture. Rationality has to be the dominant culture.
Well, we agree, and yet it shows how much it is difficult to see, you know, I just got distracted by PM, but it's, yeah, I forget my train of thought, sorry.
Now, was it a penis PM? I don't get any of that. Oh, Lefty left the room and Lefty came back.
No, it
and
was
Lefty
a
left.
total, it was a proposition. No, not really.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oof. Oh, my butt is
But Shadow, I wouldn't say it's my view per se, in the sense that I'm not saying that really justifies, because I see a real selfish side.
Fair enough.
But I do think it's a coping mechanism, and possibly if that's going to become its own culture, it's also just an evolutionary path, and we don't have to necessarily become bored. But probably we're going to have to coexist with them like symbiotic bacteria do with our bodies or something, because I used to want to stop the coming of the Borg, or whatever you might call it, and the conformity and the plasticness of it all, but I just don't see it stopping. I just see people want to do that. I mean, I wanted to stop, but then I looked out there and I go, people want this shit. They want to conform to that. How can I stop them if I believe that they have the right to decide? They are deciding right now. And the only saving grace is that a lot of people are like, fuck no, I'm not deciding that way. And they're going to make a much smaller, but definitely resilient group.
Yeah, the girl was doing that
Choose for your
side
fucking
boob
self.
thing.
It doesn't matter what other people choose.
Well, exactly, but you know there's a huge amount of people that don't feel that way, and they actually consciously even judge, but what do other people think, and consider it to be crazy to choose something different than what everybody thinks. In terms of getting a mate, everything that they want depends on that.
I assume the girlfriend is doing her ukulele thing now. Yeah, that's just so special. Dinky-linky, dinky-dinky-dink. It's the banana song. Down-dee-dee-dee-der. They should have, I mean, they really should have, like in 1940, they should have banned ukuleles. Should have confiscated every single one.
Burn them.
My girlfriend was flipping me off, but I think it was in a friendly manner, and I couldn't get it on camera.
Yeah, well, it was, you know, I saw the digital effect of it all. You know, I can sort of get it. Yeah.
I was in rapture vision.
Look at that Romanian guy there. I'll make him a moderator. Where have you been, Romanian guy, you lazy fuck? 6 o'clock in the morning, you shithead. Well, I was watching TJ's Blog TV. Yeah, that's where you were, you shithead.
No, Sizer was booted because he was being a douchebag. That's what I saw.
Well, he was booted because, yeah, I just can't, I'm not going to waste my time. I've told him he needs to learn how to speak English. Like, you ought to go to England and learn how to speak English.
You know, you are anti-Liverpudlian. That is how they speak English in Liverpud. I mean, you are anti-Liverpudlian. You know, it's like Hythloday called them a scouser. That's what they call the Liverpudlians. You don't even know it, and you're a bigot.
Yeah, I didn't even know I was supposed to call him a scouser. You know, I thought it was a plank. I thought I should call him a planker.
No, that's what we are. You and me are planks. He's a scouser, and you don't understand the dynamics here, and that you're bigoted against. He invented English. Anyway, I love arguing about who invented English with that guy. I tell him Brigham Young did it. That drives him nuts.
Yeah, well, you have a lot more patience for trolls than I do. Even when they're not trying to be a troll.
I just love when someone like him, because he's smart, but he's also crazy, so sometimes it works out in weird ways, but as a result, he's kind of really can be gullible. Like if you tell him that you think Webster invented the English language, he'll think you could be that stupid, and it's really it's hilarious. It's fun, internet fun. That is my troll side, I admit, but still, I think it's fairly honest.
Yeah, well, I think, me, you, and him, we have a great time playing pool or something, you know what I mean? But I just can't do philosophy with that fucker.
My goal is to get a website together where we somehow fund like a philosophic conference of bloggers, even ones we can't stand, and they're all there, and we'll play some pool, and we'll videotape some conversations, and that's sort of my goal, if this stuff is ever going to become productive in a sense that I consider actually productive as opposed to productive because it flows off steam.
So, yeah, I'd love to do. That would be great to do philosophy, like 2 in the morning, playing pool, a couple of beers, whatever. I mean, that would just be, that's the way it should be done.
Well, like if you ever made a debate site, what I think is you have PayPal accounts or something hooked up to people, and the people that support that person could contribute to it, and maybe even the person gets some, because I'm okay with them getting paid somehow, maybe a better way than advertisements. But some of it or all of it goes into an account that's fun when they get enough support, so people that have enough money could support it. There might be some right-wing political people there because of it. But I think people like you, for example, would find, wow, yeah, people would raise, $1,000 to send you to some place for a week, and you get a vacation, and you kind of be paid out of it as well. And what you would want to do, though, is sort of reality TV this. Everybody's in this resort in Hawaii, and you reality TV it a little bit, and there'd certainly be some drama, and, I'm sure it would be very marketable, but also it could be productive, and, you could get a vacation out of it.
Yeah, I don't mind fighting with your ex-wife, so yeah, I could do that drama part. Jane, you ignorant slut! God damn, you're a dumb bitch.
That's good to know. Thank you, Gary. You are a friend. I know some places down here where you can rent houses where everybody has their own room. It's going to be like $75 a night. So you could cater at $100 a night right on these incredible lagoons, and just there's a lot of things like that on this island, if you know, because the economy here is actually sort of depressed. So there's incredible deals where you're in the middle of paradise and you don't have to pay the 5-star resort prices, but you basically have a 5-star resort kind of setup. Especially if you're catering it yourself. The location will be awesome, but you might want to have to, prepare eating and stuff. But that's easy.
Yeah, well, I don't see. I just figure if I'm doing any traveling, it's all going to be one way. So I'm going somewhere. I gotta find something permanent.
Well, this will be every 6 months. We'll do one of these. You could be like the perennial host. I think if you're in paradise, you would be a good balance with paradise. Like, you're in paradise, and therefore you have to deal with this curmudgeon that everything you say makes you a fucktard. Welcome to paradise. We didn't want it to be too nice.
We don't have God, but here's do not God.
Actually, my girlfriend, Jen, was saying we have plenty of people like that here, actually. It does attract that. It's like, I'm in paradise, the world's fucked up, that's why I came here, let me tell you about it.
Yeah, I just curse the wind. Fuck you, wind. What are you doing?
I'm sure there's a business in this kind of thing, but maybe it'll be 50 years or some 20-year-old to figure out whatever hooks it together. I'm not confident that I can figure it out, or you're having some good software. I'm sure you're doing R&D that is kind of groundbreaking in a way, but that doesn't mean you get to win the money prize. That's how the industry works. But I do think it's going to happen. There will be things like this, and we'll probably have a little bit of your superstardom, but the 10 minutes of fame type of superstardom, like in a subculture, will know, it's not you and me, Thunderfoots, or whomever. They might be bad representatives, but you know what I mean? There will be, like, you know, you had superstar poets, then you had superstar musicians, you had superstar writers, there's going to be a time, but it'll probably be a sub-superstar of philosophical, of like citizen philosophy, and maybe academic as well, or they'll be eligible. Right?
Yeah, well, we know how it's
it's
going though. You know, we got the billionaires doing the reality TV shows. You know, so I mean.
Well, if I was to say realistically, not my optimism, but for something like this to manifest, I think it'll probably be 50, 60, maybe 100 years, and then you'll see it. On the other hand, doesn't mean somebody couldn't have a successful business that's the kind of thing that makes a few $1 million for somebody, but kind of the mainstream culture considers as nobody ever heard of it, but it's successful. The precursor could happen in our lifetime.
Yeah, 100 years.
The real thing is probably not going to happen
100 years.
we're
100 years.
That's not that long. Think about it, Gary. I mean, now we're old enough where that.
Yeah, it's 90 years after World War III. We were
twice our lives. Well, oh yeah, no, it might not happen because of other intervening events. But I mean, if it was going to happen, I don't think that really there's going to be an appreciation of philosophy like I'm talking about or hope for in our lifetimes. It's a couple more lifetimes. Is all I'm saying.
Well, I don't know. I just think things are going to get too segmented. We either do something. We have to do something as a collective now, or the whole thing's just going to get out of hand, because everybody's going to have their individual closed world that they're going to be accessing directly.
Well,
you know, the internet's it's just not going to be the internet anymore. It's just going to be the, you know, a bunch of segregated populations that just, you know, jerk each other off.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. Right now, I said, what did you say, a 1 in 100? If it was 1 in 100, what if it's 1 in 1,000 of the people, you know, of all the people, only 1 in 100 educated to college? Not that that totally matters, but let's include people that self-educate to that kind of level. Then you have 1 in 1,000, let's say 1 in 10 of those. Well, you still have millions of people, right? So, I mean, your target at this point in time is just a few million people if you had the whole internet available audience. And that's actually enough for people to make a living off of. And yet it's not enough that it'll really be noticed. It won't be like something that shows up on the news so much that you can't ignore it. It'll be kind of definitely subculture-ish. And I think that's what we could do in the next 50 years. And so somebody could have a successful business and do something productive, but it's not going to break into the mainstream, this kind of thing. On the other hand, you have to have the precursors for it to ever break in to the mainstream. And it's too bad you don't like Jimi Hendrix, because when you do like Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and stuff, you see that sometimes it's possible for the popular culture to actually have good taste. And it seems so impossible, it's possible rare. You know, maybe you could have that with philosophy or people that actually think about these issues, whether they agree with you or with me or someone else.
It's
But,
subjective.
Well, I don't see it being I don't see it being that. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm just saying that that's what it has to be, though. I mean, the rational subculture has to become the popular pop culture. So, I mean, this stuff has to start becoming more important.
Can you ever
people.
think of a time, since evidently the 60s wasn't it, or maybe it is, there were some other popular bands, or the 80s or 70s. I mean, was there ever a time where the popular culture actually chose art and made art popular that, like, you would say, yeah, that was good art? Not just by accident, because maybe I like Gilligan's Island and it was popular, but I mean something you could actually stand up for and go, oh, this was good. I can say that with Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and the Doors, because I think they were good and that was popular for a while. Just by mistake, baby boomers didn't know what they were thinking. But you know what I mean? Can you think of any time you don't like those groups? So can you think of any time, or maybe when Beethoven was quote unquote popular?
Well, I'm not disapproving of those things. I didn't say those things were rubbish. I'm just saying that I think the 60s was a time where there was a medium between, you know, I mean, there was a pretty good pop culture. I mean, the pop culture had stupid things like some elements of, you know, the stupid better dead than red, but it also did have, you know, I'd like to give the world a Coke and blah 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 blah. You know, I mean, even our even our TV commercials had heart. I mean, we had crying Indians in our TV commercials. I'm just saying the pop culture had character in the 60s. Whether it was too synthetic or not is a whole other subject, but it was there.
Okay, so I get that because those bands aren't your most favorite, but there's a lot of artistic activity, so you can still see that sort of thing. Well, I mean, what about this? Because you have the Reformation and you have the Enlightenment, hundreds of years apart. But then in our time, you start having things like the gay 90s, and then, you know, the 20s are a little wild, and then the 60s, and there's this pattern of a chance that cool art, and I agree with you, there was a lot of bullshit in the 60s that I think was bullshit, and yet overall it's like, well, good, let the bullshit have a chance too, because it was part of a lot of creative exploration, you know? And so, yeah, this is part of my optimism that you don't share, because I think there is a repeating pattern, and it's sort of getting shorter and shorter, and maybe there's going to be an intellectually stimulating era that can be sustained. Finally,
well, I mean, you're calling me a pessimist, and look what I'm doing. I'm trying to argue for this most insane of proposals that I'm going to convince all the human beings to give up on their most sacred of glorifiables, you know, life and reproduction. I mean, obviously I have to be some kind of optimist to think there's some kind of chance that you can communicate with the human race and actually get them to think about something real. So I guess calling me a pessimist is kind of silly when I'm, you know, trying the longest shot possible.
Well, it's just out of respect because, you know, of course, and there's like, Great Tex was getting on me for being an apologist for you, supposedly, and to be serious, because no, you know, I have my own thing, my own view, and I think, yeah, you really are actually optimistic, and you're an activist, and you're the kind of antinatalist that actually does put some labor, you know, and maybe not right now in your life, but definitely over your life, and probably again in your life, and probably to some degree right now, you do these activism and things that are materially beneficial, and they are optimistic, you're investing in a future. Oh, Jesus. So, yeah, but when I just say you're a pessimist, it's because I don't want to tell you, oh, you actually like life and you're trying to help make it better for other people and to a certain degree yourself. And, you know, I don't want to put that on you when you try to deny it. But yes,
but
of course,
it's the truth, though. But you don't have to be an optimist. You don't have to like life to be an optimist. I'm just saying that I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about the prospect of change. I'm not too optimistic.
Put behavioral in front of it, Gary. You know the word. Just put behavioral in front of it. You know what I'm talking about. When someone invests their time, and some people would call it altruism, but I just think that it's an investment in life. It's behaviorally optimistic, but it isn't literally philosophically optimistic. That's why I call you a pessimist, because you're like claiming, well, actually, I think it turned out badly. But I'm just, frankly, that's great. Good for your character. You're willing to put in energy anyway. It's like, it's going to turn out badly, but you know what? And you've said this before. The best thing I can do is put some energy into it. I feel a little better about it. And that's basically what I believe, but from, you know, a different angle. But, yeah, so, no, I do think you're kind of the way you live life is, one, a lifestyle thing where you know there is a way to satisfy yourself. Two, it's activist, where just because you're satisfied, it doesn't mean the world's okay, because, you know, everybody else is fucked over. I'm reading a really good thing by H.G. Wells about what he thought it would take to have a utopia. Very interesting. Of all people, H.G. Wells, and I never heard of him before.
Virtual reality, I bet. Yeah, I bet.
Well, okay, listen, here's one of his ideas, is he thought instead of a gold standard, or certainly instead of fiat, you have an energy standard. He anticipated, way back when he was, that there'd be energy companies and counties and stuff, which is how it is, that would, and he thought, well, they could issue currency. That way, the currency is backed by energy, right? So you could turn in currency for a particular amount of energy, and that would help make counties be really efficient and good at energy production because it would help their currency exchange. And he has a shitload of ideas like that, which even if that's not perfect, it's very clever. Why aren't we discussing that? Of all the things I've thought about backing the currency with, energy is great because it means that you're going to make sure you can always produce energy. Which is
but the point would be is that you would have to stockpile energy, and that would be really retarded. So you don't want to...
Well, no, you wouldn't, because there's energy surplus is a part of energy systems. So you wouldn't, but you would be prone to some
well, you
sort of...
would, though, Pyro. To be able to print enough currency, you know, you'd have to have in this current system, let's say you have to have $4.5 trillion worth of energy resources.
Well, no, look, let's say some Japanese had their Japanese currency and it was backed by an energy system, and then they lose Fukushima. Basically, their currency would take a hit, and it wouldn't be worth as much because the currency would end up being a share of the total energy produced.
I know, but that's not backed. That's not backed.
Right.
I mean, the point is I don't see any point in having a backed currency. So if you use the word backed, like a gold standard or an energy standard, well, that's a different subject then. The idea, it doesn't really matter. You don't need, if you're not going to stockpile, if you're not going to have actual resources backing up the currency, then all you need is to have any kind of basket of resources. And so I would argue that the safer bet is to have a basket, is to base the currency on the price of wheat, a barrel of oil, base it on 10 or 12 different things, and that way if any one of those things elevates in price, it won't fuck your currency.
That's my idea. I told you that idea before. That's what I thought. I've just read about this energy thing and I'm thinking about it, but that's what I've always said back when
I told you that, you fucker. Yeah, you told me that.
You stole that from me.
Yeah, you fucker. Oh, you fucker.
Oh, you fucker. No, you stole it.
Oh, yeah, right. Now left the center's going to say you both stole it from him.
Oh, my God. I'm the one that said that a million years ago.
I'll go find my video of it, all right?
No, I'll find your video. After my video. You do this all the time. You say, I do it all the time. And then later on you're like, oh, look, here's how quantum mechanics...
I was talking about how beautiful your penis was before you said how beautiful your penis was. Yeah.
Well, it is beautiful, but that's beside the point. Why'd you bring that up again?
You fucker.
No, seriously. Well, anyway, that's my basic idea that I've had for years as well. I know we've shared it before, but you stole it from me. But anyway, that's good. I wanted you to. But this is an interesting thing. Well, energy should at least be part of that, right? It's a really good one to put in there to the mutual fund of currency backing.
Yeah, I think the minimum wage, all kinds of, you can have like really good stuff tied to it, so stuff that wouldn't be able to get destroyed, like a minimum wage, like different things. So inflation could never fuck them up.
Yeah, but think about this with energy too. Like, let's say you wanted to, instead of like controlling the interest rate with the fiat money, if you had a energy problem, you could create a new energy plant. It would change how the currency works, but it wouldn't just be banker mojo. It would be like energy would get cheaper or not, to relate. So when you flooded currency, which is kind of a dangerous thing in our system, and it's always a dangerous thing, in this system it would mean you would create an energy surplus making energy cheap, and that would actually be good for people. So, I mean, I just think it's a good... But I agree still that in general my idea is, make like a mutual fund of commodities, or somehow you use commodities to back currency.
Yeah, the big problem is still going to be all the other fake paper that's going to be denominated in your currency. So until you do something about that fake paper being denominated in currency, you're still going to have a huge problem. So you can't issue bonds, of course, because that's just fucking your currency in the long run, because you never pay it back. And then you also got to worry about this whole stock market thing, because the stock market is basically creating derivative cash. It's creating cash that's as good as cash. I mean, a stock certificate is as good as cash. So in a sense, it's new money. And that's where it gets a little dangerous, because if that shit is ever if anybody tries to cash out all the paper that's out there that says it's worth this amount of dollars, obviously there's not enough dollars to cover all that paper. Lefty.
You never have to worry about that though, because no one ever comes to collect. But I just want.
Yeah, except in 1929.
On record that
Except in 1929, where everybody tries to collect and they try to get all their money from all the people that owe them money because they have to pay back the people they owe money to. So it's the IOU chain reaction effect, and that's what we're heading right for.
I just want to go on record that energy currency is something I've been talking about for years. It's good to see that other people are talking about it.
But you did steal it from me.
that Wells talking about great minds think alike. I actually think the people should be paid based on energy production. And
so wait, do you know about a modern? Left of center. Do you know about a modern utopia then that's booked by H.G. Wells?
Well, I've certainly heard of it.
I'm only reading it because you got old, out of copyright-free books, you know, like it's on Lineo or something, a book reader on the iPad. So it's like I'm getting free books and weird translations that aren't copyright anymore. And it comes up, and he wrote in English, so it's his actual book. And it's like, I love H.G. Wells, and I had no idea. This book is not just like some old guy going, here's a utopian idea. It's like full of incredibly rational ideas and predictions too of how things are right now. Like even though we don't have energy currency, he was like, I think energy companies, and this is a time when it was a novelty still, he's like, it's going to come, we're going to have manufacturing labor, and the energy companies will be locally controlled. Now he thought the local governments, well that's not quite true, but even in the U.S., it is local governments. They're pseudo-public, private, things.
Well, they're
so
publicly
like
regulated,
like that.
But they're privately profited. So that's the problem.
Right, but I mean, in terms of his prediction of how the technology would force something, he was right. Now, he was in a time when socialist type ideas were coming in, and he thought they would have more power than they would. He didn't know what the reaction would be to them quite, I think. But he was right on what the natural forces would be time and time again. And plus, he's not traditional socialist. He has lots of ideas of how, what individual property there would be, and what some kinds of property would be inheritable. Other ones, no. If you had a business, no, because you're making a living off of it. On the other hand, he's totally for making 5 big mansions, filling them with gold and pianos, and those go to your kids. But your business, the one that generated that wealth, no, sorry. It's very, very fascinating, insightful socialism that I've ever seen, like on the Orwell level.
I totally agree. I remember one of his things I read in college was he was capping on how Americans would, in the future, decorate their animals with jewelry, and how decadent they were. And, he was very ahead of his time, for sure.
Well, that makes him sound like a little bit of a nut. But anyway, but that whole infrastructure thing, I think, was something that was sort of like in his time being figured out, just because like Morse code, and you had to start dealing with these issues of infrastructure, like trains, right? Like who pays for the tracks, who gets the profit off the tracks. You don't want redundant tracks. I mean, obviously you don't want to like bore 2 holes through the mountain because you have 2 separate train companies. So there's this idea that you had to start sharing infrastructure because you couldn't, there was no way to keep all this stuff independent. You didn't want 15 phone companies running 15 phone lines to your house.
Well, that's Wells's kind of socialism. It's the same as Orwell's. It's not that we can't think for ourselves. It's the kind of socialism that supports individualism but realizes, let's drill, just one set, maybe it's more than one, but one set of trains holes through the mountain, and different train companies can share them because, exactly like you said, we don't need 50 holes just because they can't cooperate. I mean, if it makes 50 holes, fine, but for the traffic, but not because of stupid business.
Well, I just mean that it was sort of a thing like Marx and the rest of these people could sort of see some of that stuff coming. Just because of the way technology was growing in the industrial age, you just started running into these problems that you didn't have in the Wild West kind of thing, where...
Well, sadly, Marx is I think Marx had some good analysis, actually, on labor and value. But Marx was one of the crazier socialists, radical, I think, that did have a false idea about how far it went. You know, really good examples. I'm just adding H.G. Wells to really, there's only also Orwell and individuals I've met in my life. But famous people, it's like Orwell and H.G. Wells, they have a really practical kind of socialism that is pro-individual, not anti-individual. It's like we need a certain amount of social infrastructure so people can be individuals, as opposed to, you know, Marx, I don't know what was his deal. Seems like he should have known better, but he did go into a really Stalinist kind. He fed into the whole Stalinist thing that happened. There's no doubt with the internationals, and he violated even his own theories, as far as my reading.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't see it. I mean, I saw him as more of an analysis of the failure of capitalism rather than any strategy for some perfect world. So I don't know if he had a real vision. I don't think he had the vision thing about how you exactly get human beings to cooperate and create societies and the politics. He just knew about the mechanics of this one particular chess game and how it has this huge fault, almost like tic-tac-toe. It's almost like he was revealing in tic-tac-toe how, look, the game is broken, okay, because you can make it so you never lose. You know, and he was just kind of pointing out how, well, this is what capitalism will always do. It'll always fail, okay? It'll keep falling into the same ditch over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think his analysis of capitalism is spot on and incredibly sophisticated for its time. But he basically, ironically, took a sort of Christian leap of faith in terms of how you could improve the situation. He's just relying heavily on the innate capacities of humans, despite the practical problems he saw in their conditions. So I don't think he offered much of a vision at all in terms of the solutions.
Yeah, like I'm saying, he just didn't lay out the alternative game. He just pointed out how this game is broken, and he didn't point out the alternative. Yeah, well, that's how I read it. So yeah, so to me, he's sort of been libeled with this whole idea that he invented communism, and he didn't. Okay, he invented anti-capitalism. You know.
But here's the thing. I would like to say what I think. So what I think is, one, I agree with him that the capitalist system leads to this point where people would just take over what's left. The capitalist system eats itself up, and there's the infrastructure, and people would take it over. And I believe in his whole thing where he analyzes that the value of creating shoes, the leather, all added together makes something more valuable. That's from the worker. He demonstrated that. But then where he was fucked up is, Jerry, I don't know if you remember or paid attention to this history, but there were these international communist conferences, and he and Engels took part in them, and these were basically a fomentation of, let's skip capitalism. Now in Russia, they never entered honest-to-goodness capitalism. There's elements of this kind of thing, but it was a feudalism, and they never entered capitalism. They skipped fucking capitalism. Now, according to Marx, that wouldn't work. You have to go through capitalism. It's a necessary evil. It's like Nietzschean Christianity. You go through Christianity to overcome it and really learn your lesson. And so he advocated, though he was getting old, he and Engels, they were definitely a part of it and part of Fourth International, and they set up this whole thing that was used. Now, on the other hand, the Soviet Revolution was not really anything like Marx said. There was a Soviet Revolution, which Soviet means local committee, and it became centralized by Stalin and corrupted even from what Marx said. But the point is, Marx was advocating something that was corrupted as well. You can't use the gun. That's why the fucking Soviets justify being cruel to their people, because they're like, well, we skipped capitalism.
Well, I mean, the whole point was that it was.
We have to brutalize them.
It wasn't socialism. It was communism. So I mean, you know, let's make these distinctions. So, you know, it was a control of everything. I mean, the communists got into your pants. They got into everything, and that was the real failure. Is that it didn't allow there to be a fair playing field. It ran the race. It didn't allow people to run in a fair race. It didn't umpire. Okay, it didn't play umpire. No, it decided to kick the ball, to count how many goals were going to get scored, to, it just took the whole game away. It didn't play umpire, it just took the game away.
Well, you're right. There was a whole movement of it, and Marxism sort of took over in this communistic idea. It's just that it was subverted in many levels, and the first.
Well, I'm
one
just saying there is no
subverting
such thing as Marxism. There really isn't.
Well, there is. I mean, well, what do you mean? I mean, I guess I could agree with that, but what do you mean? Maybe there is. Maybe
Well, I mean, there's no, like, I could argue my fair economics, and I say, look, you do this about inheritance, you do this about creating public institutions to compete with the private institutions, so people always have a choice. I mean, I could explain the democracy thing. I mean, these are real things, so you could call it Garyism, you could call it Enmendemism. But Marx didn't have any of that detailed, this is how you blueprint a social infrastructure, a social society. He didn't lay it out. He didn't say the butcher shop is over here, and you do this way, and you do that way, and you give these guys incentives, and you give these guys, and you pay the workers, and you don't pay the profiteers, and you tax the interest, and you don't tax the work, and, none of that shit was laid out.
Well, look, no, but let the center verify me or not, but no, there is an E equals MC squared of Marxism, and it's that the workers need the means of production, control of the means of production, right? That they need to own the factory they're working in.
Like, we know that failure is if they own the factory and they get to vote on who their CEO is, they're going to vote for a one-day work week and a $700,000 salary. So I'm just saying that's where there's no depth to it, okay? It's too simplistic. I mean, the needs of the many to the needs of the few and the blah blah, all this stuff is just metaphor and bullshit, and it has no detail.
It's not really as important that many few thing, I don't think. I think the crucial material thing is that because you know what the meaning of the word Soviet is? I've learned this late in life, but that means that's like a factory running itself. Now, there is this great co-op from the Basque region that was oppressed by Franco, but just decided to do business among itself. And they have a co-op, a high-tech co-op. They make fridges and stuff like this. They still are around, multi-billion, like one of the biggest companies in Spain and even in Europe, a sizable company. And they work this way. And their board of directors some of them are secretaries and people that were out of all of the divisions of the company. It can actually work. Now, not with Americans because we're too fucked up, but maybe with Canadians, possibly.
Well, I just think it's much better just to create an independent not-profit, because as soon as you give people incentive, all right, like they're going to make more money if the company does well, then you know what's going to happen. They're going to start the schemes. They're going to start lying to the customers, putting small print, playing all the malicious games with the other corporation. You know that's what they're going to do because they can make more money. They'll get more money. They have to be paid to do their job, not paid to scheme for their little interest reward and for their laissez-faire profit. And I'm just saying the whole Soviet system was so corrupt. I mean, it wasn't anything to do. Most of it wasn't even about socialism. It was about a select group of party members reaping all the fucking profits, controlling everything. It wasn't really socialism. But go ahead, Lefty. Let Lefty go.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I completely agree. The Soviet experience has really nothing to do other than token symbol, historical use of Marx. And when it comes to the Marxist groups that Piero was talking about, Marx himself said he wasn't a Marxist because he thought those groups were a bunch of shit disturbers and they were going in the wrong direction. I think the best way to sum up what's emerged from Marxian theory is his famous statement, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. So I don't think that's a flat line, which is what communist regimes have tried to enforce. What that is a true progressive structure, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need.
Yeah, I know, but it's an idealistic structure that only works if everybody has an honest intent. And we know that's not how people are. You have to do the incentive carrot thing, and you have to do the little whippy thing, and that's just the fact. So you have to build some kind of penalty in the structure for being a son of a bitch, and you have to create the reward carrot thing to oblige people to do the, yes, here's my productive contribution, even though I should do it without being rewarded or being incentivized or being bribed. I'm going to need the bribe. And we know that as a practical matter, we have to create that. Even if it's an illusion, we have to create the illusion of the bribe. Well, that's brilliant. Really brilliant. Hey, go eat some Fukushima fish and die slow, hard, ugly, mean, and brutal. I was telling him to go eat some Fukushima fish.
Well, look, I happen to disagree strongly with that statement. I don't see that as a strong part of, maybe I'm a right-winger on that thing. No, I don't agree. I think it's a different kind of pattern. I believe what you have is a safety net, a minimal sustenance for everybody that is provided according to their needs. Everybody's provided according to their needs, even the people that are very productive.
Well, whatever. I mean, this according to your needs
no,
stuff,
wait,
it's
listen,
just not going to go anywhere. That's just a welfare state.
Wait a second. Listen, the productive people, let me just finish left to center. The productive people still can't make their own highways and stuff, so nobody's productive enough to really pull off an infrastructure. So we do that for everybody according to their need, according to all our shared needs, and that is separate. And then according to productive, that's different. The motivation for production, I like to trust that people want to be productive. So yeah, it comes out to be trivially true. According to their need, everybody gets their
go
need,
start a
according to
commune
their
and see
production.
what happens, Pyro, okay? 99% of the people
about?
will get drunk and smoke pot, okay? And the one Gary that's there is going to be spending every day outside, you know, taking care of their cats and feeding their fish and planting the garden and paving the roads and doing all the fucking work by the rest of these volunteers, right? You know how volunteers are. Yeah, volunteers don't do shit, okay? They wave the shovel in the air. It never hits the ground.
Gary, I'm agreeing with you. I don't believe in that to their need, everybody. I do believe there's a safety net and stuff that makes it kind of sound true, but basically no. That productive people get the results of their production, and I don't like the implication that the production goes to the needy people. It's not quite like that. But everybody should get their needs, but it's not quite like that. Hey, Barklord.
Well, I think the more, other than the meeting the needs of the needy, the other important part of that statement, that philosophy, is a progressive redistribution system. So, like the progressive tax is an expressed reality, you could say, of Marxism.
Well, I'm just saying, I think my plan just gets rid of the whole problem, okay? Because instead, you just don't have owners. You just get rid of the whole idea of owners of the means of production. So the workers don't own it, the owners don't own it, you know what I mean, the rich. Nobody owns the means of production, all right? They operate as separate little pieces of bacteria, and they compete in an arena, and that is the way to run businesses. Don't have a business.
I totally agree. You know, Gary, nobody agrees with you and me. I believe in this weird free market thing where these government organizations can compete with each other, but they're totally under this regulated, they have to work a certain way, they have to fit together, they have to make sure there's universal health care or whatever it is they're providing.
Yeah, well, fuck like I said, that's all got to be separate from the means of production. The means of production can't have anything to do with health care, it can't have anything to do with any side benefits. It has to be strictly and plainly. You get paid for doing a job, period. No, nothing more complicated than that, okay? The rest of society does its things. The social network crap, yeah, that's a whole different issue than the means of production. The means of production has been isolated from all self-interest, personal interest, group interest, special interest. It has to be insulated from all of it.
Denied this idea. confirm or deny this idea. One thing I think that's a little problem for us to figure out with all these issues is when you have a business and you say, well, you have to serve handicapped and black people. Well, it's in a sense when you open your doors for public business, you're a public business, but we also, most of us, support that private people can do that. Well, the H.G. Wells solution is pretty clear on this, is that, yeah, you're doing it to make a living, and there's a public aspect. That's why we can demand and open that you're hooked into our infrastructure. Our roads carry everybody. Everybody can walk into your store and buy some meat or whatever. And it's a very interesting hybrid because I like that. It's a little bit American version of socialism that you would have free markets of private people, but they just have they have to hook to the public system, and that means that okay, everybody can go in through this vacuole.
Yeah, well, whatever. I just don't see any need for it. I don't see any need to complicate the system by creating this self-interest in the means of production, because that's what gets you the small print. That's what gets all the sabotaging. That's what gets all the game playing. Screw all that shit.
What do you mean? What do you mean? There's no private business?
In my opinion, that would be the ideal. Yeah, are only private businesses that have under 15 employees, or whatever the number would be. So you could have a small business, and that's it. Nothing big.
I want to have private. Here's my version. I want to have private business, but one, the employees automatically by law own the business. If there's 100 employees, then somehow it's divided.
Yeah, well, like I said, as soon as you give the employees ownership, they're gonna do exactly what shareholders do. Okay, exactly what shareholders do.
The second thing is there is a regulation of how you have to behave, and hopefully we can police our regulations in that regard.
Yeah, if you have no owner, then you don't need to regulate. The only thing you regulate are CEOs. That's it. The public chooses them. The public hires and fires the CEOs. That's all you need the power to do. And then everybody else.
Gary, I've been in these startups and stuff, and I have to tell you that even though a group of people will be cutthroat, and like you say, if they're the owners, they'll still be cutthroat. They're not going to be as bad as these investors are. People that
what are you talking about? Bill Gates. You look at how Apple and Microsoft were formed. Come on, look at how Google was formed. Look how every single business that gained any success was formed.
I know a lot of people from Microsoft, and the people of Microsoft are much less bloodthirsty.
Well, I'm not talking about the people of Microsoft. The people of Microsoft don't own Microsoft.
Well, I'm just saying, if the people had control of companies, they're not as bloodthirsty, even though they're still bloodthirsty.
Says you. Says you.
No, but I have experience in this.
We have, as the public, we have experience with this, okay? And it's called government. All right, now government's got like 90% of the people hating its fucking guts. Because these stinking, lousy, rotten, stinking fucking employees think they own us. All right, they're not serving us; they're owning us.
Gary, how can you deny this? You know the rich people around you; they are more ruthless about the businesses they own than the people that actually work.
I'm not gonna argue with it, Pyro. I'm just saying I don't win. Okay, I don't win if I end up with the post office. All right,
well,
that's not winning.
Let me ask you this. Say a mechanic. There's a shop. I've had some local shops. I lived in small towns where the owners were a little bit crooked. You know what? Who is more